Hello everyone. As you all know, today at 8:30 p.m. it is Earth Hour. So when you switch off the lights and light your candles, do stop to think about our broken relationship with nature, how we're driving animals to extinction for ourselves, but also think about how we can help. For example, humpback whales. Before the ban on hunting them, they were critically endangered. But now there are more about 80,000 of them. So, today our show's topic is little steps on climate change. Let me introduce our panel. Our first guest for today is Dr. Fazia Perveen. Dr. Fazia is an assistant professor at the Al Khan University Institute for Educational Development. Prior to that, she was a postdoctoral and an adjunct at the Center of Water Informatics and Technology at LUMS. She finished her DPhil in engineering science from the University of Oxford in December 2018 in the field of wastewater treatment. Our second guest is Durlab. Durlab is an award-winning youth leader recognized by the United Nations in 2019 for his grassroots climate action inventions. He has more than 6 years experience in entrepreneurship, sustainability, and innovation. Next, we have Adina Tahir. Adina is an environmental engineer from NUS and a passionate climate action advocate. Last but not least, we have Amira Adil. Amira, she has been a passionate climate activist for the past 7 years. After her degree, she started Climate.org, where she animates videos in Urdu and English to make climate change easy to understand. Now let's start. Zerlab, my first question is directed to you. How do you think climate change is going to affect the future? Zerlab, are you there? It seems as if Durlab has left. So let me start with you, Adina. What is your opinion? How do you think climate change is going to affect the future? Mm,
Not audible to me.
it seems like you're having a little problem with your internet. Adina? Ah, it seems like Adina is having a little problem with the internet. Durlab, since you're here, uh, since you are here, how do you think is climate change going to affect the future?
Can you guys hear me? Hello. All right, thanks. So, yeah, I think climate change is something that's overarching in a way because it's not going to affect you indirectly, but directly as well. So, think about whatever activities you love to do, right? Be it enjoying a good walk, having a good cup of coffee. Believe it or not, but climate change does affect all of these areas that you might not think um is directly concerned when it comes to climate change. So I think there's a tremendous divide when it comes to what people usually think when they hear climate change and what's really going to happen.
Thank you, Durlab. So, Ms. Fazia Parveen, what is the evidence that the climate is actually changing? Is this only just a natural cycle? Because the climate has also changed in the past years.
So I think when we look at the weather changes, which we do from day-to-day basis, we very often just compare the different weathers and then talk about climate change. Climate change, of course, as we all know, it refers to a long-term change in the weather patterns. So it's not the short-term changes at all. So yearly changes, they could be a reflection of climate change itself, but they cannot be used as sole indicators to state that the climate is changing. But for example, in my lifetime, from the time that I was born to now, I come from a mountain community. I have looked at how the weather is changing. Particularly, I think climate change to me is the occurrence of water events, whether that is excess water or reduced water. And the part of Pakistan that I am from, where there are glaciers, where there are the mountains, and a sudden rain event, too much of it causes flooding. Sudden rise in temperature causes flooding and excessive melting. A delayed winter or a delayed summer causes lack of water for irrigation and so on. And so I could say that based on what I have seen in my lifetime as to how the water events are becoming frequent and extreme, would I say that there is evidence for climate change in my own life, other than the scientific scholarship that is available out there that we can see, that shows that occurrence of extreme events, whether it's forest fires, etc., have exacerbated. But from my own life, I can definitely say that there is proof of occurrence of climate change. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing the information with us. So, Adina, how do you think is climate change going to affect the future? Adina, we still can't hear you. Okay. Okay, so my next question is for Amira. Amira, do you think we can reverse climate change?
Hi, Iman. I hope you can hear me clearly. I do not think that we can reverse climate change because climate change is sort of changing our natural cycles, and it's going to take time for the earth to heal from it. And at the rate that we're changing our earth, it's not likely that we'll be able to reverse it. However, we can stop it where it is and try to limit our global warming up to 2 degrees Celsius because we're already 1 degree Celsius warmer than pre-industrial levels. So I don't think that it's possible to reverse it, but I think that we should still act right now to stop it where it is.
Amazing. Thank you, Amira. So, Ms. Fazia, how much do you think we need to cut down on our emissions to make a change?
I think it depends. So I think that's where the concept of intersectionality comes in, because depending on who you are, where you are, and what you do, your emissions could be next to none. So I know of people who have no contribution to emissions at all. Places where we rely, for example, on hydroelectricity, renewable resources, the offset is definitely not. There is no existence of the emissions, and therefore there's no need for offset. On the contrary, for example, when I look at the life I live, because of living alone in the city, because of the need for a car, because of the no options to have a smaller home, you now have to live in a bigger home. That just increases the impact and therefore the use of natural resources so much that your emissions are much higher. So your exact question was, Iman, if you could repeat it for me.
So How much do you think we, like as children, need to cut down?
Yeah, so I think without doing any maths or science, just looking at your day-to-day activities and seeing what are the activities that you are a part of where you are relying on some of the resources such as fossil fuel in your car. So, how changing from 10 cars to the school versus one bus to the school could change the emission and reduce the emissions. So I think just looking at the activities and looking at where they're utilizing certain um, things or even like products, your day-to-day based products, the food that you get, whether that's being transported from far away, whether that's coming from close to home, all of that would increase the emission depending on where it's coming from, whether it's imported or it's coming from the next province or it's coming from a garden that is in the vicinity of your home. So yeah, I would say every action that you have in your life, just reflect on that and then relate it to how much resources it is using. And as long as it's close to home, as long as the supply chain is smaller, I'm sure that the emissions would be smaller. So just those, the same smaller flips to switching off lights, making sure we carpool, making sure we eat local, making sure we observe sustainable fashion if we really want to observe to be fashionable, etc., etc. So I think I'll stop there because I think that's enough for now.
Thank you so much, Ms. Fawzia. That was truly amazing. So, Durlap, what is your opinion? How much do we need to cut down on our emissions?
So when we talk about climate change, right, emissions are the primary thing that we tackle too, right? So it really depends on where you're living, as Dr. Fazia just said a while ago. If you are, for example, in a urban area and let's say Western countries, right, you're talking about EU or USA, and if you look at the historical data of the carbon emissions per annum, right? It's very huge when you compare to, for example, our region. So there are going to be various differences when it comes to what you can cut down accordingly. So, like on the top of my head, right? It's about travel, right? The energy that we consume, basically, either it be by traveling or the electricity that we use, right? It also comes down to water. I think it's really important, given the region that we live in, that water consumption should be considered very, very vital. And I would say third is what you do with your time, because if you look at the latest IPCC report assessment that came out just now, right? It's all red. It's purple even, I would say, if you have gone through just the gist of it. So you really need to step up what you are able to do it in your own free time, and try to see that as some contribution towards climate action, climate change.
Thank you, Durlap. So, my next question is for Amira. What do you think can children do for climate change?
Since I've
Amira?
worked with children a lot, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
I worked with children a lot and I've delivered awareness sessions and talked about climate change and taught climate change to young kids of different ages. I've learned that the most important thing that you can do is to talk about climate change. Because when you talk about it, you are sharing your views about climate change in your own words, and you're sharing ideas, and you're creating a space to understand what climate action means to you. So, like Dr. Fawzia and Dorlab said, it means something different to everyone. Like for someone who's living in North Pakistan, climate action means something different to them, and it affects them differently. And someone who's living in Karachi, climate change affects them differently as well, for say through sea level rise maybe. So for children, the most important thing that they can do is to learn about climate change as much as they can, to talk about climate change as much as you can, because you're the generation that will inherit this earth and you need to know about climate change the most.
Thank you so much, Amira. So now, Athena, what is your opinion on what children can do for climate change?
All right, so I hope you can hear me finally.
Now, yeah,
Thanks, such a relief. All right. So, when it comes to children, I think that it's very important for children to connect with nature because everything starts when you understand the value of something, right? So, when we're kids, especially today, we're very used to being in a digital environment. We hardly go outside, we hardly interact with nature, be it, doing some sort of outdoor activity in our gardens or going on natural hikes. So when we don't do all of that, when we don't expose ourselves to nature, we never really understand the joy it is of having, protected natural environments, or the value of, getting to see insects in our garden. So for example, when we talk about the fact that bees are endangered or that butterflies are endangered, to a kid that would mean nothing if the kid hasn't really seen the beauty of a butterfly, right? So I think the first thing is that getting the kids outdoors and getting the kids to interact with nature. The second thing is that they also need to learn a bit about the science of it, and not in the way that we have been learning mostly so far. So I think game-based learning, learning that involves telling stories to one another. So often the stories that we grew up listening to, if you realize, the stories are often about people who got people who got lost, people who got trapped in a flood, people who were, uh, fighting natural elements such as a drought or a famine, and how did they recover from it, right? So telling such stories is a very good way of motivating children, so that they feel that, they can be eco warriors, and that if they interact responsibly with nature, they can actually use it to their advantage, right? So teaching kids through games, through science, and also getting them to interact with nature is, I think, the best way to get children started on this. And obviously giving them opportunities to express themselves would be, I think, the last most important thing. So whether, it's an art competition, whether it's a storytelling competition, an essay writing, allow kids to express themselves and think freely. And I think that that will empower them as well, because they will feel that they too can participate.
yes. Thank you so much, Adina. That was truly insightful. So, I want to ask the same question to you, Durlab. What should children do about climate change?
Right. So a lot have already been said, right? One thing that I really like to do and like to talk about is the importance of trees, right? And like again, I understand it's not going to solve climate change at all, even, right? But what is unique about them, as I love to call them, is they are a joker in this entire discussion, because what it will allow you to do, especially with children, is to give them an outlet to do something, right? I understand that it might not do a lot when you look at this global issue, right? But then again, it will provide a positive outlook for their efforts, and where the energy is spent more on rather than worrying, right? So this is one thing that I think we can all get behind and promote, right? But again, realistically speaking, we also need to be aware of, okay, how effective that thing is, right? I'm not saying that we all as an adults, for example, go and just rush towards planting trees, right? It's not going to be very effective, but at the same time, it's a very effective tool, especially when it comes to children, because it's an activity that they can do easily in their backyards, in their schools, right, with their friends. So it's quite accessible to them. You don't need a lot of adult supervision when planting a tree as well, and taking care of it, right? So this is one thing I think we should uh, make sure that all the children that are concerned about climate change are able to do, right? Second is, again, as Adina rightly said so before as well, is to get a little bit education, right? Obviously climate change is a very complex issue. It's evolving every year. We are learning new things, so it's necessary to have a sort of like a realistic as well as a deeper understanding, not just textbook understanding, okay, what is climate change or what is global warming, or other definitions that you and I have read in our sixth, seventh standard science books, right? We need to get out of that mentality and take it into a real life example. For example, we talked earlier about what it means for children and climate change, right? That they will lose the hobbies that they love. I talked about a bit about coffee, right? I also wanted to talk and touch a bit on our animals, right? Polar bears are often brought up when we talk about climate change, and children especially, because they can create a sort of like an emotional connection with them. But look around what your kid loves to do, right? It's not just for the children, but it's for the adults, the parents, the mothers, the fathers, right? Their sisters, their brothers, elder sisters, to think about what's going to happen, because a lot of things, at least I have heard, is around justice, right? And climate justice. I think it's really important for kids to know about this, that where we are at this point and stage, right? We make sure that the children inherit the world that we inherited as kids a little bit better, rather than leaving it in a worse situation than I inherited it, for example, when I was 18 or when I was 15. So that's also a very important concept for them to understand, and to figure out themselves how they want to approach this whole dynamic in a way that's more comprehensible and more understanding for them. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you a lot, Durlab. Now, for the $1,000,000 question. I would like to ask you all that what should we do on this Earth Hour? Ms. Fawzi, you can go first.
Okay, I think I would try to pair it with the question that you just asked before. I think we're kind of expecting too much from these young kids. Knowing that us as adults and knowing that our older generation is not doing anything, expecting them to be the Einsteins of climate change, I think it's unfair. So before I say anything, I think I would definitely say, let the children be the children. Let them live their life, as kids do. Of course, connecting with nature is an important part of it. But I think when it comes to kids, I would definitely say that parents have a huge role to play, considering how, with the use of gadgets, a lot of advertisement is being thrown at the children, and their idea and ideation and love for materialism kind of increases. They want to buy toys. They want to be into, like, all the nephews and nieces I have, they're always updating their cartoons, their books, their toys. So I think that's something that I think we all need to think of, and that would be my key message to everyone as well. To parents, that teach values to your children. Like, don't give them material, teach them values, teach them lessons that they can keep with them throughout their lives. And those messages could be being minimalistic, not consuming too much, not driving pleasure from worldly matters, but making sure that we're just happy with little. So I think this Earth Day, I would just say, try to sit and reflect within, and try to just connect with yourself as much as with nature. When that 1 hour, just give it to yourself and think, what do you want to do for the environment? But more importantly, what do you want to do for yourself as well? Because you have to be complete to be able to do something for the environment around you. So yeah, that would be my message.
Thank you so much. Adina, would you like to go next?
Sure. So I think that the Earth Hour is an opportunity for kids and adults to have this 1 hour where both of them are together, and they can use that time to create value-based conversations where they can discuss why they are doing this event, right? So parents should tell their kids about the importance of it, about why planet Earth is currently facing the climate change, and why it is something that they are doing for their kids, right? So once the parents have informed their kids about the importance of the thing that they're celebrating, I think it should be festive, it should be celebrative, so that kids actually get encouraged. So you can do some sort of activity with your children, you can do a candlelight dinner, you can have an outdoor session where you can all sit and do a stargazing thing. If you can play activities outside, right? But just try to show your kids that it is possible to have a time without anything digital around you, and to still have a good time because of nature, because of being surrounded with what nature has to offer, right? So I think that is the most that you can do in an hour. Tell your kids why it's important, why you're doing it, and make it fun, so that because kids always learn through fun and game based things, because we're not trying to scare them, we're not trying to tell them that this is right so you have to do it. We want to inspire them and we want to encourage them, right? So anything that strikes their inspiration, go for it, because kids deserve love and kids deserve to be inspired. So when they're leaders tomorrow, they're not afraid, they're not following directions, but they're doing it genuinely for passion for planet Earth.
Thank you a lot. Durla, would you like to go next?
Yeah, I think quite a bit have been already said. So I will just stick it to like going out and planting trees, right? Like again, this is a very easy thing to do. You don't need earth hour, right? You can do it now in next 20 minutes if you have the right things at your disposal. But one thing, like again, leaving sort of like with a message would be reduce, reuse, recycle, right? So these are the three things I think we all can focus on, regardless of an earth hour or not. So if you are planning to do something special on Earth Day, for example, right, I would uh, keep this in mind. So look around at your own house. Are there any things that you can do along these lines, right? I'm talking about upcycling. Like, can you use something that is not that is old? I'm talking about old clothes, any other thing that might be lying around your home, and how you can repurpose them, right? Talking about plastics, I think, is also another important thing, and trees, I think. So these are like the three things at the top of my head.
Thank you, Durlab. Amira?
Sorry. Yeah, I would suggest you watch A Life on Our Planet by Sir David Attenborough with your parents. Make an event out of it. It's a really nice documentary, and I think it will help everyone in your family to connect to nature and understand why climate change is an important issue.
Okay. Thank you, Amira. Well, that's all for today's session. Thank you all for your time. But before we leave, can you all give a message to our viewers that's watching? What little step can we take for climate change?
I think I'd like to go first. And I'd like to say that every step you'll take is not a little step. Every step matters, right? And the best thing that you can do is become an eco warrior for the environment around you. So that includes your home and your immediate neighborhood and your school, right? So try to, make sure that you are not causing any pollution. Try to make sure that you save water. Try to have meaningful conversations with your friends. Try to act with kindness with the stray animals, such as stray cats and dogs in your area. Give them water. Make sure that, if you have any birds and trees around you, then you have pots for seeds and water for them. Find different ways to interact with nature, and just make sure that you are being a kind and an eco warrior for the ones around you. So if you have that kind of a role for your environment, then I'm pretty sure you'll inspire others as well.
Thank you, Athena. Who would like to go next?
I think I'd like to go next. And I just want to say, I think as a parting message, we need to be more aware of the things that we buy and the things that we support through our money. It's not for kids particularly, but kids can play a role in understanding that a lot of our pollution comes from very few sources, like from very few companies. So if we're aware of where our products and where our services are coming from, that is an important step that we can take to support the right kind of people who are doing the right kind of businesses who are doing the right kind of things that we need for planet Earth.
Thank you so much, Amira.
I can go next. I think because you asked what can we do about climate change, particularly the viewers, I would say particularly for climate change, definitely be aware of your own GHG emissions or footprints, particularly in terms of carbon dioxide. So whether you are an individual, a household, or an industry, or any commercial activity, just keeping a track of how the GHG emissions are changing, how the little switches change it. So for example, I remember when I asked my students to look at the CO2 emissions, everyone was surprised that their education and their meat consumption was the biggest contributor to carbon dioxide emission, which they didn't, because they spend most of the time in the university. The university runs a lot of air conditioning, etc., etc. And so they weren't aware of it, and it made them realize that they could be more, they would have thought more about it before as well. So I think just those kinds of things in your universities, in your household, in your businesses, but also as an individual in your own life, keeping track of what you do and making sure that you're actually actively working towards reducing it would be my advice to your viewers today.
Thank you so much.
Right. So, yeah, I'm just left. So again, same message. I'm going to repeat it third time. Go out there, plant a tree, and I think a lot have already been said. We talked about the panelist talks about the emissions, right? And that's the one thing that I think is really important, because when you talk about again climate change and what you can do to fight it, right? Your greenhouse gases or carbon footprint, as I like to call it, is something that we can all take back as a message and see what we can do in our sort of like lifestyles and things we can improve upon. So yeah.
Thank you, everyone. So that brings our session to an end. Again, thank you all for joining me, and I want every one of our viewers to pledge to take a step on this Earth Hour. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Goodbye.